The storm crashes against the village like a beast unchained. Rain pelts the earth in sheets, turning the ground into a slippery mass of mud. The winds scream through the trees, bending them low to the ground. In the heart of the tempest, a figure stirs. Amara wakes, gasping for air as she sits up in confusion. The air feels heavy, like the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes. Her head aches, her thoughts muddled. She looks down at her arm, feeling the strange sensation of heat against her skin. A mark, glowing with an eerie light, stares back at her. It pulses as though it has a life of its own. Amara swallows hard, trying to remember how it got there. But there is nothing, only the storm and the unsettling mark. Whispers flutter through the village. The voice is soft but laced with fear. The mark, they say. It's from the spirits. It's a curse, a sign of things to come. The villagers move about in hushed tones, eyes shifting, glances exchanged. They know the mark. Some speak of it in reverence, others with dread, but all of them, whether in silence or through whispered words, fear what it means. The mark is not just a symbol, it is a key to something old, something dark, and it now belongs to Amara. At the edge of the gathering, Mama Imani, the village elder, stands with a knowing look in her eyes. She steps forward slowly, her presence commanding the attention of all who have dared to speak. "I see the mark," she says, her voice heavy with ancient wisdom. "It is the one from the prophecy, the mark of the spirit that has long been forgotten." The crowd falls silent, every eye on her as she speaks. It was foretold that when the mark reappears, the earth will tremble, a new path will be forged. But the way forward is not for the faint of heart. The spirits will demand their toll. Amara stares at the elder, the words hitting her like a physical blow. A prophecy? What could this possibly mean? She didn't ask for this. She didn't choose it, but there it was, marking her for all to see and for all to fear. The villagers begin to murmur amongst themselves, some hopeful, others fearful. Amara is caught in the middle, her heart racing as she fights to make sense of it all. The prophecy, the mark, the spirits. What was happening to her? Deep within, a battle rages. Should she keep the mark hidden? Could she ignore it and live her life, trying to forget the strange power that now coursed through her veins? Or should she confront it, face the truth, and risk the consequences? The night grows colder, the storm intensifying. Amara senses it. Something is not right. The very air around her feels charged, crackling with energy. The whispers of the spirits grow louder, more urgent. Are they speaking to her? Or is it something darker, something not bound by the natural world? A presence, unseen but unmistakable, hovers close. Amara shivers as she feels the eyes of the spirits upon her, pressing her to act. The weight of their expectations presses down on her like a stone. She cannot escape it, no matter how hard she tries. And then the decision comes. A moment, a breath, a heartbeat. The storm outside seems to pause as Amara stands tall. She can no longer hide. She cannot turn away from the mark. She steps forward, the spirits watching, the villagers waiting. It is a choice that will change everything. Amara moves, her heart pounding, the future uncertain. There is no turning back now. The mystery of the mark is about to unfold, and the truth, however dangerous, must be faced. The village lay in the grip of silence, broken only by the rustling of the wind through the trees. Amara stood at the edge of the settlement, her heart pounding. She had come home, but it didn't feel like home. The place of her ancestors now felt strange, foreign. The familiar faces watched her from the distance, as though they weren't sure what to make of her anymore. Her blood tied her to this land, but her time away had created a chasm between her and the village. Amara could feel the eyes of the villagers on her, studying her every move. She had lived in the city for too long, surrounded by modernity. She wore it in the way she carried herself, the clothes she wore, the way she spoke. It was a sharp contrast to the life of the village, rooted in tradition, in the unseen forces of nature, and the spirits that walked among them. She had grown accustomed to the ways of the city, but now, standing here, she felt the weight of something ancient pressing down on her. She had come to find answers, to understand the strange pull of her heritage, but now she felt more lost than ever. Torn between two worlds, one modern, one ancient, she wasn't sure where she fit. The village's rituals and beliefs were distant to her now, just as the city's fast pace had become foreign to her roots. Mama Imani, the village elder, watched her from a distance, her eyes sharp and knowing. The old woman had lived through decades of change, but she still held on to the wisdom of the ancients. She approached Amara quietly, her presence commanding. "The space around her, the mark on your arm," Mama Imani said, her voice low and steady. "It is no small thing, child. It is a sign, a calling. Your bloodline has carried this power for generations. The spirits have marked you, and now they are watching." Amara's hand instinctively went to the mark, its heat seeping through her skin. It had appeared suddenly, glowing like fire against her arm. She had no idea how it got there, but Mama Imani's words carried weight. The mark was not just a symbol, it was a key to something unknown. "You must be careful," Mama Imani continued. "There are forces beyond our control, and they will test you. The spirits will demand their due. It is not a curse, but a calling." Amara stared at the elder, her mind racing. A calling? What could that mean? What was she supposed to do with this power, with this mark? Her thoughts were interrupted by the voice of her brother, Kwame. He had always been different from her, pragmatic, skeptical, with little patience for the village's superstitions. "The mark, spirits," Kwame scoffed, stepping forward. "This is nonsense, Amara. You're letting these old tales cloud your judgment. We live in the present, not in the past. This is just a trick of the mind. The world has moved on." His words stung, a sharp contrast to Mama Imani's reverence. Amara felt the gap widening between her and her brother, a divide that seemed impossible to bridge. He rejected the traditions she was beginning to embrace. To him, the spirits were nothing more than stories, relics of a past that had no place in their modern world. "But what if they're real?" Amara asked, her voice shaking with uncertainty. "What if this power, this mark, means something more?" Kwame shook his head, disbelief evident in his eyes. "You're not the same person anymore, Amara. You've let these people fill your mind with superstition. This is dangerous." Amara felt the pull of her heritage, strong, like the roots of an ancient tree. She couldn't ignore it, not when the mark burned against her skin. But how could she convince her brother, the person she trusted most, that this was real? How could she make him understand when he refused to see? As tensions simmered between them, the village carried on with its daily rituals. Elders gathered, performing sacred dances to honor the spirits. The lion's ritual was being prepared, an offering to the ancestors, a way to communicate with the unseen forces that govern their lives. Amara watched the villagers move in harmony, their connection to the land and the spirits evident in every movement. She felt something stir within her, a deep yearning as if the spirits themselves were calling to her. The power within her was awakening. The mark was not just a symbol. It was a bond, a connection to something far greater than herself. But what was she meant to do with it? The pull of the spirits was undeniable. Yet so was the pull of her brother's world. a world where tradition had no place, and the unseen was ignored. She stood at a crossroads, torn between two paths, to embrace the power within her, to honor her ancestors, or to follow Kwame's lead and turn away from the traditions that had shaped her family for generations. Either path would demand a price. And as the night deepened, the spirits seemed to grow restless, their whispers filling the air, urging her toward a choice that would change everything. Amara's hand trembled as she touched the mark again, feeling its heat pulse beneath her skin. Every night since it appeared, strange things had begun to happen. Shadows seemed to move when no one was there, creeping across walls, flickering like dark flames. She heard whispers, faint voices that seemed to speak directly into her mind. At first, she tried to dismiss it, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent, pulling her deeper into their mystery. The villagers spoke of her mark in hushed tones. Some saw it as a blessing, a sign that the spirits had chosen her, that she was connected to powers far beyond what the world could understand. But others, more cautious, feared it was a curse, a warning of disaster. These conflicting views divided the village, tearing apart old bonds and sowing suspicion. The air was thick with tension, and Amara felt like she was caught in the middle of it all. But then the stranger arrived, Adu. His dark eyes seemed to hold secrets, and his voice carried the weight of someone who had lived through centuries, even though his body was young. He came with cryptic words, talking about the mark and its origins. He knew things that no one else did, and the way he looked at Amara made her heart race. Was he here to help, or was he another part of the enigma she had found herself trapped in? "You have a gift," Adu said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "A power that the world has forgotten, but one that is awakening. The mark on your arm is the key to the past. An ancient spirit, lost to time, is stirring." Amara stared him, confused. "A spirit? What does that mean? What should I do?" Adu's smile was wry, as if he found amusement in her confusion. "You must awaken the past to understand your future. The spirits are already watching you. They will guide you, or they will punish you." She shuddered, the weight of his words pressing down on her chest. A spirit? Watching her? Guiding her? Or punishing her? Meanwhile, her brother, Kwame, grew more frustrated. He had never believed in the village's old ways, and now, with the mark, he saw nothing but trouble. His disbelief cut through the conversations, like a knife. "This is madness, Amara," he shouted one evening, his face flushed with anger. "You've become obsessed with superstition. There's no spirit, no curse. This mark is nothing but a scar." "I don't know what it is," Amara snapped, her own voice sharp with uncertainty. "But something is happening, Kwame. I can feel it. The spirits are real." Kwame's face darkened with a mix of frustration and concern. "The only thing real is progress. The world is changing, Amara. We can't live in the past." The rift between them deepened, the love of siblings lost beneath the weight of opposing beliefs. Amara felt torn. Her brother's words echoed in her mind, urging her to focus on what was real, on what could move them forward. But then the whispers grew louder, their messages more frantic, as if the spirits were growing impatient. Late one night, as she lay awake, trying to escape the whispers in her head, the visions began. Fleeting images, flashes of light and shadow, danced behind her eyelids. In one moment she saw herself standing before an ancient temple, the mark on her arm glowing brighter than ever before. In another, she stood at the edge of a cliff, the wind howling, the voices calling to her. The spirits, both kind and malevolent, reached out to her, showing her glimpses of her fate. What did it all mean? She couldn't ignore it any longer. Adu had spoken of an ancient power awakening, and with each passing day, Amara could feel it. The mark on her arm was more than just a symbol. It was a link, a connection to the forgotten spirits of her ancestors. But the more she felt the power growing inside her, the more she feared what it would mean for the village, and for her. The villagers, divided between tradition and progress, now stood at a crossroads. Some believed that Amara's mark was a blessing, that she would bring the spirits' favor to the village. Others, like Kwame, saw it as a threat, something that could destroy everything they had worked for. The air was thick with tension, the battle between belief and reason more fierce than ever before. "Amara," a voice called, pulling her from her thoughts. "The ritual is ready." The village was preparing for the lion's ritual, a sacred dance to honor the spirits and ask for their protection. It was meant to be a plea for balance, for unity. But Amara knew that the spirits were restless. The mark on her arm had already begun to change the course of things. She had felt its power surge, its influence growing with each passing day. It was no longer just a sign of the past. It was the future, calling to her. As the ritual began, Amara stood at the edge of the Ye. Gathering, her heart racing, she could feel the spirits watching, their presence heavy in the air. The villagers chanted, the rhythm of the drums deep and urgent. But Amara's mind was elsewhere, lost in the pull of the mark, in the visions that had haunted her. The choice was before her. The spirits were calling her to action, to unlock the secrets of the past. But would she follow them? Or would she turn her back on everything she had known to embrace a world of logic, of progress? Her brother's voice echoed in her mind, but so did the whispers of the spirits. The weight of the decision pressed down on her. Could she truly ignore her heritage, her ancestors, and the power that now flowed through her veins? Or would she risk everything to find the truth, no matter the cost? The ritual ended, but Amara's battle was just beginning. The spirits demanded action. The village demanded answers. And Amara stood at the center, torn between the two. Amara stood at the edge of the village, her heart pounding as the weight of Adu's words echoed in her mind. Everything he had told her, everything he had promised, had been a lie. He was not here to guide her. He had used her. The mark, the spirits, the awakening, all of it was part of his plan. She felt the sting of betrayal as she realized the truth. "You were never meant to be a part of this," Adu had said, his eyes gleaming with a cold, calculated hunger. "The power of the ancient spirit is mine to control, not yours. You were just a stepping stone, Amara." The anger surged inside her, the betrayal cutting deeper than she had imagined. She had trusted him, had believed his cryptic words, his promises of power and answers. Now everything was unraveling before her eyes, but she would not let him win. The village was already divided, but now it seemed as if the very balance of the world hung in the balance. The mark, once a source of uncertainty and fear, had become the key to everything, and Adu was trying to claim that power for himself. Amara's eyes narrowed as she turned, heading toward the sacred forest. If there was any place where the truth would be revealed, it was there. The forest was the heart of the village's spiritual power, a place where ancestors' spirits whispered in the wind, and the earth itself seemed to hold ancient secrets. She walked deeper into the forest, feeling the presence of the spirits grow stronger. The trees seemed to close in around her, their shadows stretching like fingers, guiding her toward the heart of the forest where Adu awaited her. When she finally found him, standing in the clearing, his smile was all cold satisfaction. "You came to confront me, but you have no power here, Amara. The spirits belong to me now." Her heart raced as the mark on her arm flared, glowing brighter than ever before. She could feel the pull of the ancient deity, its presence growing stronger, demanding her attention. But the spirits around her were restless, their whispers urgent, full of warning and anger. "You've made a grave mistake, Adu," Amara's voice rang out, filled with a mixture of fear and resolve. "This power doesn't belong to you. The spirits will never serve you." Adu's laughter echoed through the clearing, mocking her defiance. "You think the spirits care for you? They care for power, and I will give them what they desire." The ground trembled beneath their feet as the spirits, both malevolent and benevolent, surged into the clearing. They surrounded them, invisible forces pulling at the air, fighting for control. Amara's body trembled, not from fear, but from the overwhelming power that surged through her. She could feel the deity's presence more strongly now, the tether between them pulling her in different directions. Her eyes widened as she realized the truth. The mark was not just a symbol, it was a connection, a spiritual tether to the ancient deity. She had the power to control it, to wield it for good or for destruction. But the weight of it, the responsibility, nearly crushed her. Adu's voice cut through the chaos. "You cannot control it, Amara. It's too much for you. Let me handle it, and we can reshape the world together." Amara shook her head, the decision clear. She could not let him manipulate the spirits, the village, or the very power that flowed through her veins. This power was hers, not his. With a deep breath, she reached out, calling on the spirits, letting the power of the ancient deity surge through her. The forest erupted in a blaze of light, the spirits clashing in the air, their voices rising in a battle for control. Amara's body hummed with energy as she held her ground, the mark on her arm glowing fiercely, connecting her to the very core of the earth. She felt the deity's power, its ancient strength, but she refused to let it consume her. "You cannot win, Adu," Amara declared, her voice steady. "This is my destiny. The spirits are mine to guide." The ground beneath them split open, and the spirits collided in a violent surge. The ancient deity's power rose, but so did the spirits of the ancestors, their voices joining with Amara's as they fought for balance. The battle raged, and the village's fate hung in the balance. The lion's ritual began in the distance, the drums beating in the village, as the villagers called for judgment from the ancestors. Amara's choice, her actions, would determine the outcome. Would she embrace the power and risk losing herself to it? Or would she turn away and let Adu claim everything for his own? With a final, desperate push, Amara unleashed the full force of the mark, sending a surge of energy into the clearing. The spirits cried out, their voices echoing in the wind, and the light from the mark flooded the forest. Adu's form flickered, his power crumbling under the weight of her resolve. The spirits, both benevolent and malevolent, fell silent. The battle was over. But as the dust settled, the ancestors' judgment was upon her. The spirits had made their decision. Amara stood alone, her breath ragged, her body still humming with energy. The power was hers, but what would she do with it? Would the village survive the consequences of her choice? The ancestors had spoken. The fate of the village and of Amara was sealed. The village was quiet, but not peaceful. The echoes of the battle, both spiritual and physical, still rang through the hearts of the people. The air was thick with tension as the villagers tried to understand what had happened and what the future would hold. Adu was gone, but the consequences of his actions lingered in every corner of the village. The earth beneath their feet felt different now, charged with a power that had not existed before. Amara stood in the center of the village, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the sun dipped low. The mark on her arm burned with a steady warmth, a reminder of the force she now controlled. But it wasn't just the mark that had changed. It was her very being. Her connection to the spirits had grown deeper than ever before, and with it, her power had transformed her in ways the villagers could not ignore. Her brother approached her cautiously. His eyes, once full of warmth and trust, now held a flicker of doubt. "You've changed," he said, the words heavy in the air. She met his gaze, her eyes glowing faintly with the spirit's energy. "We all have changed. The village, the land. It will never be the same again." He shook his head, stepping back. "You are not the same." His voice cracked. "Amara, I don't recognize you anymore. These powers, this spirit inside you, it's too much." The village had seen her in her simplest form, just Amara, a girl caught between the world of the living and the unseen. But now, she was something else. She could feel the spirits around her, their whispers constant, their presence undeniable. They were in her, with her, guiding her. The transformation was evident not only in her aura, but in her very appearance. Her skin seemed to glow with a faint light. Her hair moved with a life of its own, and when she spoke, the spirits seemed to echo her words. Kwame's distance stung, but Amara did not blame him. The power was not only hers to carry, it was a burden, a weight too great for any single person. And yet, she had no choice but to bear it. The elders, too, had noticed the change. They gathered in their circle, whispering amongst themselves. Their eyes followed Amara whenever she passed, a mixture of reverence and fear in their gaze. They had always known the spirits existed, but they had never seen one so close, so tangible. Now, they could not deny that Amara's connection to the supernatural had changed everything. They had to accept that she was no longer just a village girl. She was something more, something they could not fully understand. One elder, a man, who had long been a voice of authority, looked at her with a grave expression. "The spirits are with you now, child, but you must walk carefully. They are not to be taken lightly." Amara nodded, understanding the weight of his words. She felt the spirits constantly, their presence always with her, but she knew she could not allow them to consume her. There were times when their whispers overwhelmed her, when their demands became too much, but she held firm. She could not lose herself to them, not now. "I will learn," she replied, her voice steady, though inside she struggled with the power that surged within her. "I will learn to walk with them, not let them walk over me." Days passed, and Amara's powers grew. She could call to the spirits, communicate with them as if they were living beings. Their voices no longer came in whispers, but in clear words, direct and demanding. She could sense their desires, their needs, their anger, and their joy. It was a strange feeling, like being part of something larger, something older than the world itself. But with it came the knowledge of the cost. She was not fully human anymore. The more she embraced the spirits, the more she lost herself. It's night. She would sit alone, watching the stars and feel the weight of the world on her shoulders. The spirits filled her with power, but the more they gave her, the more they took. Each time she communed with them, a piece of her humanity slipped away. Her reflection in the water no longer looked like the Amara she once knew. She was becoming something else, a bridge between two worlds, but one that might soon break under the strain. Her transformation was not without its consequences. The villagers, though they had started to accept the supernatural in their daily lives, still feared. What they did not understand, they had witnessed the power of the spirits, but they had also witnessed the cost of that power. Their awe and reverence for Amara grew, but so did their fear. She was no longer just a girl to them. She was something different, something to be worshipped, yes, but also something to be wary of. Amara, too, had come to accept that the village was no longer her home. in the way it had once been. It had changed, and so had she. She had a new role to play, one that she could not yet fully understand. The spirits had chosen her, but what would that choice cost her? The questions lingered in her heart, unanswered. "I don't know what comes next," she whispered to the night, "but I will walk this path, no matter where it leads." The village was adapting, slowly but surely. The elders now spoke of the spirits with a new reverence, and some villagers even began to seek Amara's guidance. They came to her, asking for help, seeking wisdom from the spirits she now spoke to. What had once been feared was now embraced. The old ways, the old beliefs had returned, and the village was learning to live with them. But Amara knew that her journey was far from over. The spirit that had marked her had not yet revealed all its secrets, and there was much she still had to learn. Her transformation, though powerful, was not complete. There were still questions left unanswered, paths yet to be walked. And as she looked toward the future, she knew that the power she now wielded would shape not only her life, but the fate of the village itself. The cost of her choices was still unknown, but she was determined to face whatever came next. The journey was just beginning. Amara sat alone under the vast sky, her mind heavy with thoughts of the unseen forces that had guided her through every twist and turn. Spirits had whispered to her since the beginning, since the mark appeared on her arm, since the battle with Adu. The ancestors had called to her, their voices like echoes in the wind. She had always felt their presence, but now it was as if they were with her at every moment, shaping her decisions, pushing her forward. But what if she had been nothing more than a puppet, strung along by forces beyond her understanding? The wind stirred, and she could almost hear their voices again, though not in words, just feelings, an overwhelming sense of power. The spirits, the ancestors, fate. They were all connected in a way that she could barely comprehend. Her choices had been her own, but had they? Was she merely following a path laid before her by powers she could not control? The weight of it all pressed down on her. The village had changed because of her. She had changed. Her transformation had not only altered her own life, but had rippled out, affecting everyone. But with that change came consequences, some of which she could not foresee. She thought of her brother. His doubt had been like a knife in her chest, but perhaps it was justified. Was she still the same sister he had known? Or had the spirits claimed her entirely? The village had seen the power in her, but they did not understand the cost. The elders revered her, but they were also afraid of what she could become. It was clear now. Her defiance of fate had consequences, not just for her, but for the entire village. She had thought she could change things, improve them, but the spirits had always been watching, and their judgment was swift. The power she had gained was not without its price. Her humanity was slipping away, and with it, the connection to those she loved. The spirits had given her this gift, or was it a curse? The power to communicate with them, to understand their will. It was a blessing in some ways, but it was also a burden. The more she embraced their guidance, the less of herself she had left. Was this the price of power? Was it worth it? Her thoughts swirled, but one truth remained. She could not undo what had been done. She had crossed the line between the living and the spirits, and now she was forever changed. But there was a part of her deep inside that understood something else. These choices, these powers, were not entirely hers. She was connected to something larger, something older than her. The ancestors had guided her, shaped her, even when she didn't know it. Her actions were part of a larger story, one that stretched across time and space. The spirits had not simply watched over her. They had steered her, perhaps in ways she couldn't yet see. Protection, judgment, it was hard to tell. But she felt their eyes on her always, in every decision she made. The spirits were not passive observers. They were active participants in her journey. They were the reason she had survived the battle, the reason she had gained the power to shape the future. As the realization sank in, Amara stood up, the cool air brushing against her skin. She no longer saw the world as she once had. She understood now that her path was not just her own. It was part of something much bigger. The past and the future were connected, and she was at the center of it. She had a responsibility to carry, both to honor the traditions of her people while also embracing the future that was unfolding before her. The decision was clear now. She could not run from the power she held, nor could she ignore the weight of her actions. But she could walk with both, tradition and progress, the spirits and the living world. There was a balance to be found, and she would walk that line, no matter how difficult it might be. In the quiet of the night, Amara made her decision. She would embrace her role, not as a servant of the spirits, nor as a ruler of the village, but as a guide. She would lead them into a new era, one where the past and the future were not enemies, but partners. Her power was not a gift to be hoarded, nor a curse to be feared. It was a responsibility. She could not change the past, but she could shape the future. And as she walked forward, she knew that the balance of power and fate was the key to her survival, and the survival of the village. The spirits would always watch, but now she would walk beside them, a part of both worlds, with a clear understanding of what her role must be. The journey was not over, it had only just begun.